A cinematographer, also known as a director of photography, is a key member of a film production team responsible for capturing the visual elements of a movie. This role involves making artistic and technical decisions regarding camera placement, lighting, composition, and camera movement to achieve the desired look and feel of the film. My guest today is someone I consider family, the GOAT DP and one of the producers on the Break a Leg project, Stephen Gadget Taylor. Stephen is a DP and filmmaker born and raised in Far Rockaway, New York, and found filmmaking through a summer youth opportunity. He kept up with the craft and has since gone on to found Colorway Productions as a means of broadening the visual representation of people of color. I met Steph by DMing him on Instagram when I was going through a rough time mentally during the pandemic, as I'm sure a lot of us were, and he quickly stepped in and became one of the brothers and friends that I didn't know I needed. And I will always appreciate him and be grateful for that. With that being said, welcome to the Break a Leg Behind the Reel Cinematographer edition. Hey everybody, my name is Thomas Cooksey. I am here with a special guest today, Stephen Gadget Taylor, and I want to welcome you to the Behind the Reel Cinematographer edition. Today I'm with Steph, who was the DP on Break a Leg, and we're going to just discuss some cinematographer stuff and some topics from Break a Leg. First question, cinematography. Why cinematography and not another position? There's so many positions on set. Why did you choose cinematography?
I think it really goes back to how I got into film to begin with. My first boss and, down the road, my mentor, Deanna DeRoy, she kind of had to teach us the ropes about how to do anything with cameras. And while she was educating us on, what aperture is, shutter speed, how to compose a frame, since that was how we were introduced, I think that's just what I latched on to. But on top of that, aside from music, whenever I'm imagining things or whenever something's stuck in my head, it's usually visual. So if I'm trying to express myself or just get a point across, it usually is in my head in a way where I see an image rather than words or sound as examples.
Okay, fun question. If you were not good at cinematography and you didn't think you could get better, what would be the position that you would enjoy doing after cinematography?
If it wasn't cinematography, honestly, it'd be amazing to be the on-set crafty person, because who doesn't love food, for one? If your food's good and it's been a long day, anytime somebody comes over to see you, you're just bringing the mood back up. And anyway, my down the road retirement plan is to potentially open a halal cart or some form of cart food, just because many a night have been saved for me personally from the halal carts. So I want to try and bring that love back into the community in some way. So
yeah, I wouldn't trust you.
Wow,
I don't know.
that's
crazy.
crazy.
I don't think I would trust you by the food cart because when we go there, everything would be gone. There would be no Oreos. There would be no, you're a very nice person, except when you're around Oreos and other food.
I mean, I would make the food though. So I'm obligated at that point to leave most of it.
I think you would eat it all. It's my personal preference.
I'd cut a plate for myself to the side, and then I'd also eat again on set. But
Be are there any Oreos left?
Oh, Oreos, yeah, that's iffy. If they're golden, there'd be plenty left. But regular or double stuff, yeah, I don't know. Slim pickings.
Let's talk Break a Leg now.
Cool.
So Break a Leg was 4.5 days of shooting. Me and you did a lot of pre-production. This was my first project where I actually did pre-production with someone else. I harassed you many nights on Zoom and Google Meets. How important is pre-production for a film?
Pre-production's vital. I was talking with Makiba, one of the other producers on this recently, and she was explaining this to one of her mentees, and I think this really rings true. A good director makes a good film, but a good producer makes a good experience making the film. And I feel like if you don't have good pre-pro going in, things just get messy really quickly. So there's always like a bunch of stuff, even when it is well produced, that falls through the cracks or just has to pivot and shift really quickly on the day and on the fly even. So yeah, pre-pro is vital. If you don't have it, I mean, you're flying blind. That's scary. I'm not gonna lie.
What was that quote again? That quote was nice.
A good director makes a good film, but a good producer makes a good experience making the film.
We did have a great experience.
Yeah,
We
like
did.
everyone had a great time. I wasn't there for one of the days. We had a second unit DP, Destin Hernandez, but that was the day everyone was playing Fortnite, and I missed that day. So that sounded awesome.
That was a fun day. And that was the day Makiba got me addicted to a new pasta place, Forma Pasta.
See?
Shout out to Forma.
Good producer puts you onto good experiences. So rings true.
Very important. Very important. I'm a David Fincher fan, and pretty much all of my stuff I like to look a little dark, but not too dark. What was the overall lighting concept that you came up with from what I expressed that I liked?
I think everything prior to the turning point is lit pretty low contrast, almost high key. Because at that point, it's still like lighthearted comedy. But then once we hit the turning point and onward, it definitely shifts a bit darker. And I feel like that's where the David Fincher influence comes in a little bit more. Okay. Heavier shadows, the color choices for lighting, I think also come in a bit more at those points. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Two-part question. What's it like working with a camera team, and how do you work with the camera team to make sure the camera team is getting the vision that you want? Like, how do you express that to the members in the team without feeling like a boss?
Well, without feeling like a boss is interesting. Working with a camera team is great because, I mean, when it's just you on your own, I mean, sure, you know what you need, so you don't have to, like, communicate necessarily the same way. But having a team just speeds everything up. You have other people to, like, bounce ideas off of, other people to, like, handle, for instance, if there's a lens that needs to swap, that can work while you're talking with the director or, like, the gaffer about, like, a lighting change that can help motivate, like, a character moment or something like that. Not feeling like a boss, I say, is interesting because to some degree you kind of are. Like, the rest of your team looks to you for direction, so you kind of have to be a boss to some degree, but not bossy for sure. Like, I think there is a line between being a boss and being bossy. I think being open to your team's ideas and feedback is important for sure, but also just knowing, like, where they are. Because, I mean, people come on set in film from, like, pulling, like, an all-nighter the day before editing. So, they might be tired. Or, like, they might just be having other stuff in their life that is also of high importance. And, like, this film is one thing. And, it's only, like you said, 4.5 days. But they still got other stuff that can impact the rest of their life that they got to handle. So, yeah, I think just flexibility and knowing, like, where your team's at is important. And communication, of course, is also, like, key, but that goes for pretty much any kind of relationship, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about locations. So every film has some locations, unless we're shooting in my house like we are right now. But if you have the opportunity to visit locations beforehand, should you just wing it? What are your thoughts on that?
If you have the opportunity to visit, I would say visit as many as you can without it being, like, overbearing, because you kind of just never know what you're going to get yourself into until you visit. As an example, like, some of the intro scenes take place in an audition room. A bunch of people in film are probably like, oh, okay, well, white walls, big open space, probably a little echoey, might have some windows. That's true. But, for gaffing, they might want to know how many outlets there are and where they are and if they can even plug into them because they might be in the frame. They might want to know for sound if there's any, like, AC units running through it that will basically make the room terrible to film in.
We did have that.
Yeah. You might want to consider stuff like street noise. Maybe the wall is white, but there's, like, some paint chipping off of it. I don't know. Just anything that you can gauge just by taking 30 minutes just to like walk around a space. That's critical, super helpful. And it also just gives you a gauge on other stuff, like where to put gear and people. And, you know, you might get inspired also just by like different things within the room that might not be in like photos online or something like that. So yeah, I would say visit any spaces you can. You know, might just spark something for you.
Fun fact, at that audition room, we did do a visit, and I still didn't realize that I needed a place to put all the equipment. So I had to buy a whole nother audition room. So back to pre-production, very important. Something that I learned on this set is that you need to put your equipment somewhere. And this is the first time that I had equipment that didn't fit on one dolly. So that is a fact.
Yeah. I mean, without knowing until now that like that was, I guess, something that we didn't anticipate going into, I wouldn't have known that. It was smooth, like the process loading in, where Crafty was, where Holding was. All that was pretty chill, you know, across the hall. And, you know, you could get like a little quick bite, get some tea.
But that
Seemed
was
pretty
because
seamless.
I had contingency money.
More pre-pro
That's one thing I
planning.
did learn.
More
Always
pre-pro.
have contingency. My father taught me that.
That's big brained.
Let's talk about the bar scene. So
Cool.
what was the most difficult thing you encountered that day shooting the bar scene?
I guess I would say running against the daylight hours was the hardest because the initial plan was to have this like 600X out here as our key. But like Thomas said, it was raining. So we couldn't necessarily like put that out there along with the grid. The 600 would have probably been fine, honestly, because it's weatherproof. But yeah, we would have had to run power outside to it. And since camera was looking, you know, from this angle at this door for a good chunk of the day and like in several scenes, we couldn't necessarily run a cable out the door. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the windows opened either. Or if they
No,
did,
they were locked.
okay, yeah, they were locked. And even if they did, like, that would have just been sound bleed everywhere. Even with the door open, same thing, because it was a busy street on this side. So, yeah, the plan in the end shifted to basically nixing all of this. And instead, we just brought in these two lights, our kickers, and just placed them, you know, in these corners instead. We made it a tight fit, but it worked. And because it was raining that day, we basically had soft, diffused, cloudy lighting all day, which honestly, it looked nice. So in a weird way, it was a gift and a curse. The lighting was good. It was just limited by what nature was going to give us at that point. So, you know, can't really change much about when sun sets and all that good stuff. So in the end, I think it still looked pretty solid, but that was probably the hardest part, just having to get two chunky scenes done in one day.
So we talked about the bar scene and what was most difficult with the bar scene. Now let's break down some of the frames.
Sure.
And some BTS picks for the people at home.
Let's start with Carrie. Let's start with Nick. This is when Edward first confronts him in the bar. Part of this setup and something that a lot of, you know, people that work on camera and lighting will probably notice immediately is that we're shooting on broadside, which is just, you know, shooting on the side of the face that's lit versus in shadow. So, you know, this versus this side. This is mostly because at some point in the film, there's an intentional camera move to the shadow side. So we're on the broadside for now, before that tone shift happens. In terms of how we lit this one was actually pretty chill. This is mostly just the key from that window. Actually, I'm going to change the color of my pen because this is one of those darker frames I was mentioning. Let's just go plain white. I guess that's boring, but it's whatever. So we had the window coming in here, acting as his key, exposing this side of the face, and then these like little orange like rims coming down like that side of the face. That's basically that's coming in from Carrie's hair light and a bounce that we had kind of off frame and then shooting into a corner. It's a little hard to, I guess, draw where that is because it's not necessarily like in this exact spot. It's further past where he's looking, even like behind Carrie and to his left. But I can give an illustration of that as well. That bounce is coming from here. So that like gentle, warm light we're getting on his face here, that's pretty much from that bounce.
So just a kiss of light.
Yeah. Can I yes, object erase, thank God. Instead of all this individual pixel nonsense. Okay, so that's his shot. And then Carrie, as you may have glimpsed in this, to get that shot, we had a hair light up here coming down and creating this like warm wrap down there. And then the window is working again as his key. This is after the tone shift. So we're now on the shadow side. That hair light is wrapping nicely on his shoulder, acting as a rim. Also like kind of filling in his ear a little, which some people do and don't like. I've seen that there's like tricks where you can take like, I think, paper tape and just basically Greek the back of their ear so you don't get like these little highlight spots. I thought it looked nice. It's a nice.
Do you like the natural look?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really feel one way about it or another. I think it gives, I guess, realism. But, you know, tone-wise, it's warmer light coming from this direction, so I don't mind the warm tone on that side of the world anyway. And then you can see the blinds here from the window. That's coming in as his key. And there's... I guess I can't zoom in further. There's a soft eye light. That's just more of the windows further down in the bar that you can see in like this diagram. That's probably like this window here. Oh. Yeah, it's probably like that window there, acting as what would have been Carrie's eye light.
Okay.
Yeah, and
you want to talk about how you used the practicals, or were they used at all?
Yeah, we had these practicals playing, throughout the bar. These just act as like background texture, just so we can see into, into the back of the bar when we're looking at Carrie and like some of the wider shots. It also just, gives some life to like this shelf here, so it doesn't just fall into darkness too much. We did unplug this neon fish light though, because I don't remember what color it was. It was probably green or some form, but it was fighting the key light too much and making a weird color cast that I'm sure whoever did color would have hated. So yeah,
that was me. You used the aperture MC for something. I think we have a shot of that.
Yes.
What was that for?
So like I mentioned before, we were fighting daylight. So as you can see between this photo and this one, it is much darker on his face. But with the power of modern technology, we were able to compensate with that. So this is our gaffer, Destin, and our second unit DP, the GOAT. I think we were on probably like the 85 at this point. Is that your longest lens? Okay. So yeah, so camera's there. This light was likely then acting as a catch light for Carrie in that case. And since this scene takes place later on in the film, we switched it to a warmer tone just to, I think, insinuate like the shift in day a little bit. Or it could just be that this photo was taken with a different white balance, so it looks warmer.
I think that's what it was. Because it wasn't that warm.
Yeah. So, wish I could zoom in further. But yeah.
How important is it to have little fixtures like MCs or I forgot what the light bulbs are called?
Oh, B7s?
B7s.
In terms of ranking, there's essentials, great to haves, nice to haves, and then, anything past that is just bonus. I would say MCs and B7s are great to have because you can hide them pretty easy. And as you can see, Destin's just holding it, and it's not a heavy unit. It's battery powered. The battery lasts decently long if you're not, maxing it out all day. So they're good for just scenarios like this where you need to sneak in like a catch light or just to give someone like a touch of fill if the camera's really close to them without having to set up a stand, get sandbags, soften the hell out of it after it's all set up. And, it still does the job pretty well with something small like a MC. A B7, for anyone that doesn't know, is like a light bulb shaped fixture. So it actually screws into the stuff that would be playing as practicals right now. And B7s they're pretty good. They can be any color that you want, and they're decently bright. They're not like the brightest thing, but you're just trying to replicate a light bulb, which isn't normally too bright to begin with. So,
Okay, you said Destin was holding the light. Pop quiz.
mm-hmm.
When a crew member is holding a light or a bounce board, what is it called?
Is that a quiz for me?
It's a quiz for you.
Oh, it's Hollywooding.
Hollywooding. I'm going to put that up there for the kids at home.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's a good breakdown of the bar scene. Let's move on to the warehouse scene.
Cool.
First question, the warehouse scene. What was the most difficult thing to shoot in the warehouse?
The hardest thing with this was, if I zoom in here, there's a shot where Ray kind of comes out of this elevator and comes in, walks into the middle of the room. We initially were planning to do that as a one take from downstairs, follow him through the first floor of like what essentially became holding, but follow him through there into like this lift gate elevator. He was going to go up, exit, and then we'd suddenly just be in this like hostage, crime scenario, which would have been like a real tone shift for everything else.
Why didn't we do that?
We didn't do that because the owner of the property basically had to do the actual lift gate himself and everything.
And the elevator was 17 minutes long. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, it's pretty lengthy. So adding the walking from outside in, doing all that and everything, it would have just been a lot of padding on runtime for not a lot of payoff. Maybe if we like could have heard in the film or something like what was happening upstairs from outside, maybe then it would have like built some like anxiety and tension for what's going to be revealed. But at the same time, like
it still would have been too long for me.
It would have been too long, but also like, why can you hear this guy getting beat half to death from outside? That's horrible. That's not like a good crime. So people would have called that out pretty quick.
Even
probably.
think of that.
Oh, that's like I don't know. It just crossed my mind just now. But anyway, yeah, it would have just taken too long practically. So I think we basically like chopped out the moving from one location to the other. He's just in the elevator and then he exits and he's in that situation. But yeah, that was probably the hardest one just because it was several takes where we had to get the timing for the elevator right, his blocking, my blocking, because it was also all handheld. So I had to kind of land in frame in accordance to where the actors were as well.
All right. So we have an original diagram of what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
What did we do and what did we change and why did we change it?
Okay. So I'm going to zoom out slightly just so you can see everything. I'm going to circle what we kept in terms of lighting. So this stayed. And that's it. This tool display was a practical in the end. We did put a light above it to simulate the lighting coming off of it, but in the end, this tool display wasn't strong enough to act as our key. So we kind of had to add like a second unit up here to kind of like cast down. Actually, I'm going to change the direction of that a little. But yeah, something like that. So that way it came in there. You can see that in this photo. So it's up there hiding. And our edge light, which initially was going to be like outside of this door, which had like a really heavy industrial fan. The plan was to like haze up the room a ton and have someone like manually pull the pulley mechanism that would have operated the fan. So that way the light coming through the blades would be spinning actively throughout the scene.
But they got some cool shadows with that.
Yeah, it would have been awesome. But it was too cold to do that. So in order for that to work, we would have had to run power to the unit, which meant keeping the door open and also
Freezing.
yeah, keeping like the hatch to this fan open, which also would have let more air in and sound. So I'm sure Teresa appreciated that we didn't end up doing that. But yeah, you can see it back here. That's the fan, but it's covered in sound blankets. And this is the door that would have had to have been open. But in the end, we just moved our edge light there. And yeah, that, I mean, it was still pretty nice. Like even with the haze, like we still got all these like beautiful light beams. You know, some nice like hard light coming in for the edge. So it still looked pretty nice. We also had a skylight working back here that initially we were thinking we might have to cover if the light was going to be too inconsistent that day. But I can't remember off the top of my head. Was that also cloudy that day? We didn't cover it, so it may have been consistent.
I think the sun just passed.
Okay.
So we were getting a consistent, like there were two.
Yeah, there were two.
The skylight in the back and the skylight in the front.
Okay.
And they actually gave like a little bit of depth to the images and didn't drown out the image. So we didn't have to use a lot of extra lights, even though you did use the bounce board for like the close-ups.
Yeah. So as we moved in, yeah, we definitely used this bounce down here a good chunk just to fill in some of the shots, you know, as we went throughout the scene. This is how the space looks naturally without anything. So yeah, that nan light that we kept, that was like above that desk. You know, our key was up here, and then the edge is way out of frame. But yeah, that's how it looks from the other side.
Can we take a look at some of the frames?
Sure. So, any preference for where we start? These are 4 keyframes.
Start at the top left.
All right, cool. We'll work clockwise. So this is Edward.
It's a badass frame right there.
Thank you. For him as well. It looks great.
Oh, he loves it. He feels like he can be an action star now.
Hell yeah. That's good to hear. Nice.
I told him no. Yeah, I told him no.
So this is like pretty much right after the bar scene. So for the lighting in this, we had our key light, the one that's, you know, simulating this tool shed, you know, playing from like the rafters coming down, just acting as like the light filling his face here. And
the pool of light.
The pool of light. Yeah, that's the skylight working naturally. And our edge, we didn't actually play. The edge didn't play in this one because he's in black. The rest of the space is like this bone white. So he already stood out enough. So that actually didn't play in this frame. So this is, in terms of what we added to the space, this is technically just a one light setup. Now going clockwise, this is, again, our key light up here coming down, our practical that, you know, the location already had. They just had like lights built into the actual shed, which was really cool. It makes everything look really nice. If you want any detail shots, they're there. They also had like small ones and like this kind of like industrial jack-o'-lantern back there, which is pretty cool. I think this back here is also another skylight, which is nice. Gives a little bit of color contrast between like the yellow greens on the right side of frame, which is where the Fincher kind of influence comes in terms of color. And then our edge coming just to fill in, I guess, like this back part of her dress. so it doesn't just fall into darkness too quickly. And, you can just see some more detail on it. You can see, I guess, if you look in her shoe, what direction that edge is coming from, because there's a little bit of like specularity in there. Cool. So working clockwise yet again. Another very action movie-esque frame.
Was this intentionally Dutch? Did we always say Dutch? I think we did in pre-pro.
I don't know if we always had this in mind as a Dutch. I like Dutches, so I might have just done it and just like, how does this feel? And we just went with it. We may have even done the options with and without it, to be honest. Which is another benefit of pre-pro. If you plan well enough, then you've got time budgeted in the day to, play around and just see how things feel if you want. So yeah, this is very much so our edge. We just turned it, I guess, roughly like 40 degrees, 45 degrees towards him or something like that. So that way he got like these nice like halos on his hair, these like sharp lines going down his face. And past that, we probably had some bounce playing on this side of frame, just to fill in his face, because otherwise it wouldn't have been full silhouette. It would just been like a tad too dark. But yeah, so this is again like a one light setup, because even though we're using a light and bounce, the bounce technically isn't a light. You're just using one light and then reshaping it a second time. So, yep, another one light setup. And then this, I feel like you really get to see all of our sources at work. So all of like these warm tones on her face, on the hand, on the gun.
On Julia.
Yes, on Julia. Thank you.
Or Jessica, which is her real name.
Okay. On Julia/Jessica. And also in her eye. You can see that little catch light. That's all of our key. Let me swap this to yellow. So yeah, that's all coming down from above, acting as our key. You might even see that here as well, and just some of the lighting, I guess, like contrast and like direction on the tape from where that light is coming from. And then we have like the cooler edge light. Whoops. Oh my God. What? Oh my God. Why? I'm gonna just do that. Yeah. Our edge light is coming in from above, just adding some shape to the back of her head, and like the back of her neck, just so that way, it separates her from the background a bit, and just balances out the exposure a bit as well. Sorry about that ruler. I don't even know what I did to do that just now, or how I would get rid of it. I literally don't know where that setting is. I'm sorry.
All good, all good. All right, so what was your favorite shot from these 2 days?
Favorite shot? This one with Edward was pretty cool, just because it felt very John Wick, and I remember everyone, even on that day, was like, oh, that looks great. So, that stood out for me. I thought it felt very... For me, this is probably like some of the more like intricate lighting, or in terms of like figuring out how I want my lighting to look and executing it to how I imagine it. This is probably like one of the scenes in general that does that for me. But I mean, I'm a sucker for a good like action hero kind of frame. So there's another shot that I was anticipating going in that isn't in these four, where we did a rig with the pistol. Not that pistol specifically, but a pistol, a prop pistol, where it's kind of like a POV shot from Edward's perspective. So that was pretty cool. I think we're saving that for actual viewers of the film to witness that firsthand without any spoilers.
I'll probably release it on some BTS eventually.
Okay. Well, yeah. So yeah, that was the one I was looking forward to most. But I mean, the whole day was great. I had a good time. I think everything looks pretty solid. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so we'll end it with any tips for a future cinematographer.
One tip related to like gear, because who doesn't want to talk about gear? And I'll give another tip about, I guess, just how you work. I'll give
Always buy the newest camera.
God, no. If only. If we all had the budget and could do that, if only. My tip would be to get a light that is versatile and ideally battery powered. It doesn't only have to be battery powered, but if it can be, cool. Because then you can bring that on set with you to probably most of your shoots. And if you're a DP, you have to consider lighting. Honestly, kind of at like the same level as your camera work. Your shot will look great, but if it's not lit well, I mean, like, can we even see it? You know what I'm saying? Like, going back to this example, shot looks great, but if he was like all of silhouette, I mean, it would maybe still look nice, but you wouldn't see his expression. You wouldn't necessarily appreciate any of like the, special effects on his face either, which would suck because what's the point at that point? So yeah, get a good, reliable, versatile light.
Any suggestions?
The Aperture 300X is good, mainly because it's not too expensive. I think when I picked it up, it was like $1,100, I think, but it might be cheaper now because it's a few years older. You can attach plenty of soft boxes, barn doors, Lecos to that. Those are on set all the time. I think we're using one now even. Oh, yeah, 300D too. It's still pretty good. It's like, the older brother. So yeah, that's pretty good. What else? Nanlite has pretty similar lights, of like a similar power and capability. But yeah, I would say Aperture is pretty good. Like, they're on set all the time. People are familiar with them. They don't cost too much, and you can run them off V-mount batteries or gold mounts. But I would highly recommend V-mounts because the voltage on them is more stable, supposedly, than gold mounts. And you can just get bigger V-mounts over time rather than having to only rely on plugging it in somewhere. So you can take your light outdoors and not just have to rely on house power. My second tip in terms of how you work, I guess, would be to do a few passes on the script. One, just to read it outright, just see how the story is. The second, to leave notes for yourself and thoughts. And then anything past that, if you're doing further rounds of notes or thoughts, maybe with like the director. Hi, Latte. Hello, lady. Yeah, with the director, sound, special effects, because all of these people also have things that they need to weigh in on. And for instance, going back to this again, you may have a shot in mind that will like ruin special effects. Like, you want to get like a close up on someone's eye, but because there's like special effects makeup by their face, maybe it's not special effects meant for close-ups. So if you do that, it's going to suddenly look cheap. That's an example that I've run into in the past. Not this specifically, but in the past, that's something I've run into. So yeah, just leave some notes for yourself to refer back to, and then check in with your other department heads. See if there's anything that you had in mind that will pose any problems when it comes down to actually shooting it. So that way you can either get ahead of it and think about it in pre-pro, or if it's not really that big a deal, maybe if the pre-production's done well, like we mentioned earlier, maybe just see how it goes on the day and figure it out from there. But as much as you can prior, I would suggest doing that.
All right. Where could people reach you if they wanted to reach you?
Sure. So you can reach me at Stefan at colorwayproductions.com. That's my email. Or you can DM me or my team at team.colorway on Instagram. We're also at colorwayproductions.com. We have a little contact form down on our homepage. And if you want to reach out to me specifically, and not via email for some reason, at gadget.mov is also cool.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Thomas Cooksey. This is Stephen Gadget Taylor. This is Behind the Reel, the Cinematographer edition. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, y'all.
Peace.